In any minute now, as soon as I can make it work.
Okay, well, while John's dialing in, why don't we go around and do a quick introduction? I can give a quick overview of these meetings are held every month, the chapter leaders roundtable.
Somebody has YouTube playing in the background, I think. Is that you, Ben?
John's dialing in. Sorry about that, that was me. So we do these meetings once a month. This month we're focusing on the situation in Ukraine. John sent out an email to all the European chapters, and we've got a great list of people here. So I'll introduce myself to start. My name is Ben. I've been involved with e-NABLE for about 3 years now, working from Rochester, New York, and focusing on media and different activities across the network. So I'll pass it to Eric.
Hey, my name is Eric Bubar. I've been with e-NABLE for like 8 years now or so. I started out matching with people to give them devices, but now I kind of try to test and assess devices and release testing protocols that other people can follow. I say that, but right now I'm building a hand, so that's why I keep staring down. I'm attaching little limbs and stuff. So nice to meet everybody.
And who are you going to pass it to?
I will pass it to John.
John Shull, that would be me. I'm John Shull, co-founder of e-NABLE, and happy to see you all here. I will pass it to Alberto.
To me? Okay. Alberto Navatta from e-NABLE Italia. I founded the chapter about 3 years ago, and we are also leading a group of families with children with amputation and agenesis. And we have a great community of families here in Italy. And
great.
Passing to Jeremy.
Thank you. I'm Jeremy Simon. I've been with the community for, I guess it's coming up on 10 years. Do what I can to support the whole community. A lot of that support is through infrastructure and sort of technology. I also do a lot of project management, and I'm always trying to understand how I can best support the great work that you are all doing. I will pass it to Mazvi.
Hello, Mazvi, co-founder of e-NABLE Lithuania, and currently, the sole e-NABLE hub developer. There we go. I'll pass it on to Theo.
Hi, I'm Thierry Okidab. I co-founded e-NABLE in France in 2015. And we've been happily building hands since. And I pass it to Zeynep.
Zeynep, you're on. Okay, we lost Zeynep. I will pass it to Dan Robinson.
You're muted, Dan.
Let's unmute. There we are. Better?
Yep.
I founded the Upper Valley e-NABLE chapter here in New Hampshire. And we've done 5 Phoenix 2 to this point. So we're kind of excited to see how we can, grow and help support the community more. And I will pass it off to Michaela.
Hi, I'm Michela from Italy, from Io Do Una Mano, and nice to see you again. And nothing else, I pass the ball to James.
Hi, I'm James. I work with the e-NABLE, which is a chapter of e-NABLE. We started out working together with e-NABLE France. Now we're kind of independent. Over the last 2.5 years, we've managed to supply about 10 hands, and we're now working on some specific tools for kids who want to go on a bicycle or a swim or whatever it is. We are actually finding that these kind of tools are more requested than the overall hand. So we're starting to develop quite a few of them, and we'll put them through the hub as we go along. But I must say thank you to Theo. If it wasn't for him and the organization in France, we probably would have never started. So thank you, Theo. And I'll pass the word to, I guess, Nate.
Hi, I'm Nate, fan of Koala. We're in the UK. It's the end of the day for me. If I look sleepy. Made my first e-NABLE hand the other day because I asked John for one, but I've been a massive fan of the platform and the community for years. I was in uni when you guys started, so actually would have been even before that. But we make mostly sockets, so we make soft prosthetics. So we make prosthetics like shoes, and we do stuff all over the world. So yeah, just came back from Syria. No, well, came back from Turkey working with Syrian refugees, and so when the opportunity to talk about Ukraine came up, I was very, very, very excited to. So great to be here. Great to see you guys. Who will I pass
Great
to? Ben, Ruben.
We have Zainab back.
Yeah,
it's Zainab.
Yes, I'm back. Yep.
Zainab's back.
But now you're on
Yes,
there.
yes, yes. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Been a part of e-NABLE for 8 years, but doing hands for 6 years. Have done a total of 150 approximately. With a community over 3,000 volunteers all over Turkey. We're an official NGO, and we just started a project with the aim of completing over 120 hands for this year. We've already handed out 10 and aim to complete the first batch of 30 hands by the end of this month. A lot of requests here. And great to be here and talk to you guys. First meeting the Italy people and Nate. Glad to meet all of you.
Now Zainab is in Turkey, Nate, and yet you missed her. So that's why we're all
I
here.
feel terrible.
That's right. And she's
Next
got one of
time.
our biggest and most far-reaching operations anywhere. And she's been working in the past with Syrian war refugees. And here we are. There's another war on. And one of the main purposes of this meeting is just to compare notes. And for those of us who aren't in the thick of it, to understand how it's impacting you all. For those of you who are in the thick of it, the question of what,
John,
if anything, in it. Sorry?
He's on a phone connection, Theo, so his audio is coming through the one that's a phone number.
But can you hear me? Okay. And Theo, you are now on mute. You know, this is, it's a hard problem,
there's
but
been a blank
someday
in your
Zoom is
speech.
going to get an artificial intelligence system that knows how to deal with this.
Yeah, if you see the lips moving, unmute.
Right. Anyway. So the question arises, how is the Ukrainian situation impacting you all? And do you have thoughts about possible roles for e-NABLE? I don't assume there is a role for e-NABLE, but I imagine there's going to be a increased need for prosthetics, splints, tourniquets, and maybe just volunteers who can be of service. But there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of chaos. And so I wonder if any of you have any thoughts or experiences to share.
Maybe a good place to start is, has anyone already had any kind of involvement with dealing with, Ukrainian refugees or providing any kind of assistance so far? Okay.
I can mention that I've talked to Open Source Medical Supplies, and they are working with GLIA International, who runs their operations in the Gaza Strip, and have a lot of experience with kind of wartime tourniquets. They spent several years developing a design that could be 3D printed, and have iterated a lot and addressed problems with current designs, and have something that they think is functional that can be 3D printed. But right now their focus is on getting large amounts done. So e-NABLE's kind of structure isn't great for that because you just do an injection mold and you get a huge amount right away. So they've contracted to get some injection molding in Europe to get the tourniquets out faster. They do have an eye towards developing better documentation for their 3D printed tourniquets, but since they are very, frankly, they're more dangerous than our hands, right? If you use a tourniquet wrong or something breaks, you injure somebody. If an e-NABLE hand breaks, then you just print a new one and make them into a new superhero. And instead of Superman, they're Spider-Man, whatever. Not a big deal.
Right.
Breaks, it is a big deal. So they want to really work on their documentation and make sure that that is all correct before they publish anything. They are very interested in working with e-NABLE and getting, once they have that documentation out, right, to get tourniquets, maybe not for Ukraine, but for other places where they might be needed. So yeah, I would say we're waiting on the documentation for tourniquets. I don't think that's probably a good source, a good project for most enablers to do. I don't suspect they're qualified or have medical expertise or connections.
With tourniquets, we've been down that road since the beginning with tourniquets. There are a few issues that make it really non-viable in the same way that it was with COVID, with the face shields when it started. The two biggest issues is, number one, the plastic. It cannot be just regular PLA. It has to be heavy duty nylon, probably would be best, but not a lot of people have the capabilities to print in nylon. Or PC, PP, high temperature materials. So for most hobby level people, it's pretty much not feasible. And then the other issue is sewing. It has to be heavy duty threading. It has to be done properly, professionally, and etc. So it's a very complicated. We tried to, well, we didn't try to set it up. We looked into how it would look like to set a very similar setup as with COVID shields. And it's really difficult. There are not a lot of people who can manufacture the plastic parts. And then you have to find someone who is willing to sew everything together in a very, in the proper way. So, and yeah, it's really not that easy.
So that's a great rundown on tourniquets, and GLIA has some very recent publications, I think in Medium, in which they talk about some of these issues. So Eric, I'm sure we are interested in what they do, and also we are standing back, not standing by, until there's something appropriate. I intend to go from tourniquets to splints and from splints to prosthetics in case there are some opportunities. But Mazvi, you are on the border, are you not, with Ukraine?
No.
Are you seeing?
Yes, but we're seeing refugees. We're not directly bordering Ukraine. We have Poland and Belarus in between us, either or. We're seeing quite a bit of refugees in the streets everywhere. They're pouring in.
And how are the services, how's the country responding to this influx?
Very, very well.
Oh, cool.
It was, well, at the beginning, when it first happened, the Red Cross organized a drive for, for clothing and food and everything pretty much. In, I want to say about 5 hours, people brought in 30 shipping containers worth of goods. And they had to pause the drive because they couldn't handle the amount of stuff that people brought in.
Cool.
So yeah, it's the response is there are so many people that we know who have Ukrainian refugees living with them in their homes, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so the response is very, very, it's amazing. But we're not in Poland is where it's at. I don't remember the current numbers. I think it's like 3 million refugees or something in Poland. It's insane. We're not seeing that many here, but
got it.
So it sounds pretty clear that tourniquets is probably not the area to focus on, but it sounds like splints are very promising because it is truly a 3D printed solution. It involves thermoforming, which we're already very skilled with as a community. Has anybody here done any work with 3D printed splints, like something like that, or anything along those lines? Anybody have any thoughts to share on doing that kind of thing?
yes, and I can from personal experience. My fiance busted her her wrist, and we printed a few of them. FYI, the TPU version is completely garbage, but the PLA version is fantastic. I think
I was thinking something like a tough PLA would work nicely for that.
It's the I think it was someone was sharing their screen here. It's fairly universal in terms of size. It's fairly easy to well, it's extremely easy to print, extremely easy to thermoform, and all you need is some Velcro straps. I mean, you could probably get away with something else, but
so you printed that flat and then thermoformed it, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Very nice.
And it did work, and it did help. It's not cast level rigidity, but it's as a splint, it looks good. And also, well, the finger stuff that I'm doing, but that's probably irrelevant for what we're talking about.
Is the sizing of something like that, Masvi, mainly a matter of the thermoforming, or is there a scaling process involved too?
This one?
Yeah.
It's just because it's fair. It has the tolerances for all of the holes are really huge. So it's just thermoforming. You can thermoform it into any shape, size it on the bed as required, but you don't really need to tinker around it as with hands.
It's a nice benefit because that means that, we could just print as many as we can at a certain size and a recommended material, and then they can be thermoformed where needed, right?
Oh yeah, you can flat pack it and just ship a ton of them in a small volume.
So that's interesting. Anyone else have any experience with these splints? So do we have any idea whether there is need and interest for these splints?
That I don't think that we will have the answer to, John.
Yeah, that's going to be tricky. The logistical part of this of making the right contacts.
Well,
I can ask around.
Okay.
I can ask around because I have contacts that have contacts within the Lithuanian military that is in direct contact with the Ukrainian military, et cetera, et cetera. And I can ask around if there's a need for this kind of a device. Well, splint.
Do we have an STL for that splint thing? So we can.
Whose design is that one that you did, Masvi? Where did that come
from Thingiverse. I'll find the exact link because we tried a few variants, and one was just completely really bad, and this one really worked well. I'll try to find it. I'll share it on the hub as we go along. I'll put the link on the hub.
And then if,
Terrific.
you know, if we do find that there's a need for this, I think it's going to be important for us to, you know, very clearly lay out instructions, what material people should use, print it at the default scale, you know, any other instructions on how they can print it, pack them, where to send them, and make it really easy for people. But that sounds like something that we have a lot of 3D printers that could get behind.
I'm wondering whether injection molding is the right mass production technique for those same splints, whether there's a group that's on it. Eric, I imagine the people at GLIA might have some insight into the splint question. And I became aware of GLIA through the CTO of Field Ready, formerly with Engineers Without Borders. So I can ask him also. It sounds like if splints are viable, it's something the community could do and probably would do. And the notion that people could just churn them out and then put them into a package and ship them in bulk is all, I think, quite interesting for us. The challenge will be, are there people who want them, can receive them, and can deploy them? So I will, Nazvi and I, at least, are two people who can reach out, and Eric, to inquire about that. Anyone else know how to explore the demand side?
I know Eric's leaving. Eric, do you want to?
I've got to go teach. I put a ton of stuff in the chat. I'll talk to open source medical supplies and see if they have connections that can connect us to people that need the splints potentially.
That would be great.
I live in
Okay.
DC, so I'll stop at the White House on my way home on my bike ride, and I'll just scream at Biden, "Hey, you need some 3D
That's
printed?"
good.
And I'll see what he says. I got to go teach.
There might be a few other offices in DC that would be relevant. It's a good point. Let us know if you get a response from Joe. Give him my best.
Will do. I'm going to put my email in the chat. If anybody has ideas or needs to reach me for any reason, send me an email.
That
That's
link
great.
that Eric
Let's all
shared
put
to
our
the-
emails in the chat.
That link that Eric shared to the Prusa blog is worth looking at. They have not only a nice looking splint design, but a number of different variations, one for a finger, one for a hand, one for an upper arm. They have all different types of splints for different conditions, which looks appealing.
And I do know that
And
Prusa is all about talking to the Czech Health Ministry and making sure that anything they recommend is safe. So I think we can trust that anything that they publish on their blog is going to be safe to use. Great to meet you all. I'm going to go teach some physics. Bye.
Do any of us have connections with Prusa these days?
I think Eric probably has one of the best connections. I know he always has had a relationship with them.
Okay. Worth making a note and asking him to inquire with them also.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've done tourniquets. We've got some questions with regard to splints. Then there's prosthetics, but with regard to prosthetics, I actually wanted to start with Nate, because, God, it's probably 2 years ago already. Nate and his partner were developing this new tourniquet, which looked like the perfect complement to what we were doing. And he's still standing, and he's now saying things like, we're doing this all over the world. And it's worth revisiting the question of whether designing some of our hands to fit with your sockets and understanding pricing and distribution might change the applicability of enabled devices. The other question I have, Nate, is whether medical professionals are using your sockets on recent amputees, or whether it's you're still on the same 6 months to a year of healing before it's appropriate to look into it. So how about an update, Nate? And if you have a screenshot to share or a device to show, this is your moment.
Oh gosh, yes, probably. But I am terrible at multitasking, so I'll talk and then get it, and then share it. And Yeah, God, I've got a lot to update you guys on. So yes, so we do all kinds of things. I'll start with we do early rehab stuff, is what we call it. So we got approached by some surgeons who saw that our prosthetic sockets were soft and sort of posed us the question of, well, if I normally need to wait at least 6 weeks for the skin to heal and then the flesh underneath to heal, but I can put dressings on before that and put, those kind of like those fork bands, and you can put like, sort of functional tools on a limb. Can we put your soft prosthetic on a limb? And that prompted us to start designing a new thing, which then became the ALX, which is our current soft sleeve. So the MIT design is now defunct, and we've got this new ALX design, which is nice because it's much simpler and much easier. It's essentially just a flexible tube that you can put anything onto. And that's been used as soon as, I think, maybe an hour and a half after surgery.
Whoa.
As it was used about, I think, 15, 20 minutes after the guy woke up. His name was Alex. So he's the guy I was working on it with, Alex Lewis, who's the quadruple amputee. He's worth a Google, really cool dude. But that's amazing. So in terms of independence, next level. And
Yep.
Also, as you were mentioning earlier, like having functional tools at that stage is really useful. Just something so you can feed yourself, just something so you can hold a phone next to a loved one. Really, really simple. Let me get one so you can get an idea of what I mean.
Great.
I'm often well armed. So you may not have seen one of the MIT designs, but they are very simple. And this is the new ALX design. So it's essentially a fabric sleeve. This is a below elbow sleeve. So you can see that's the hinge that goes above someone's elbow, sort of goes about there on someone. And you just got this really simple dock on the end, which you can just plug different tools into. And that can be anything. And you can just there's a little button up there. You can imagine that plug is very simple geometry. So John, you showed me one of the gripping hands because we were looking for some cosmetic solutions for work we're doing in Sierra Leone with amputees out there, which there are lots. If you've seen the film Blood Diamond, it's no joke. That stuff really went on. So you can just CAD on the plug onto pretty much any design or any tool that you have, and then just clip it in. And that's in there. So like you can do pull-ups with that, and the tool will break before the wrist does. So, so that's quite strong. A bit about the sleeve, just because it might be useful. So you have the wrist unit, which I think for designers is the interesting part, because it means you can put anything on anyone. But because it's flexible, you don't necessarily need very close measurements of someone. You can just get it. If you know they're an adult or a child, we can probably figure out the right one, because we have 2 different circumferences. And it comes in a standard length, and you can just use regular scissors and cut it down to the right length and then screw the wrist unit on. So I talked about early rehab, but that's also relevant for low and middle income settings where all rapid response. So in war-torn areas where you don't have a lot of time, you don't have a lot of resources, you need to deploy something quickly. You can fit one of these in about 15 minutes. Without ever having met the person before. So it comes like a little backpack, and you can fit it. And just because it's fun, because I like it, because a lot of stuff we do for kids is how we started. You can make these very small, but also it's all about personalizing them, which you guys get, making them different superhero colors, turning something that is potentially, especially if they've lost their limb, they're a child, turning them from something which is, terrible into something that's hopeful is, I think, quite important. But anyway, so everything we do is modular. So the thing that tightens the sleeve is actually just like a cosmetic cover. So that can just be fabric, and the actual sleeve itself is sort of this semi-flexible shoe-like material, not unlike a sneaker. And this currently comes in below elbow form, which is the ALX. We have one for partial hands. So if you've got a wrist joint but have lost some of your fingers, that's called the paw. And again, tools clip in the same way. And we're in the late stages. I feel comfortable saying we've got it finished. We've got an above elbow one as well. All the same principle. So that's good. So I mean, we've been approached by a few people, and I might be able to help with the demand side once I learn more, because we've been approached by a few people in and around Ukraine and in and around the kind of organizations that are out there. But you can imagine that they're dealing with a lot right now, and prosthetics is one of many things. So we're keeping. So as I know more, I will share more. But I'm really keen to do something there. I'm keen to do stuff with you guys as well. Like as needs crop up anywhere, just sort of let us know, because I think when we spoke, John and Jeremy, we were at the stage where we were very much in development and didn't really know what.
And if you do manage to establish contact and you identify a need where your solution can help, there might be an opportunity for us to, maybe we can help by printing some of the end attachments and tools that would fit into those. I'm guessing you could share the sort of a template CAD model for the plug that we could, bolt onto our designs pretty easily. So
chuck it on everything. That's definitely right. And we're at the stage now where we've got a small factory. It's a big workshop. We've got a little factory in West London where we make these. We were initially doing them in China, but then COVID happened, which actually was for the best, because it meant we had to figure out how to make these ourselves, not just treat it like a black box. But we make these in about 100 to 200 a week. So we're no longer supply limited. So if anyone needs anything for their projects, please promise to email me, and we'll get you stuff. that would be great to do.
That's terrific. Thank you. I heard the way you put that, but I'm also curious, when you sell these, what do you sell them for?
Depends on the volume. So, because I mean, we're going from everything from individuals coming to us and they just want one, all the way up to working with organizations who are buying, hundreds at a time, pushing thousands at a time. And that obviously scales the price. So the headline price is that if we're doing it at big volumes, we're talking thousands, this is like a global access kind of setting, like trying to make a dent in the millions of people who need limb loss, $150 for a full system, so sleeve tool, per person. So I'm always careful to talk about per person, because normally things are costed by component, but actually what we're really trying to do, we're trying to make something useful for a person, and people's needs change and kids grow and all this stuff. So per person, $150 a year, that'll be fine. Obviously in lower volume, it's going to be more inefficient to make specific things, but no more than $500.
Okay. Interesting. But when we spoke a few years ago, and I think you're still saying you are open to the notion that partnering with us as an R&D shop and potentially adding other end effectors, we could just work together without having to deal with your purchasing department.
We'd love to do that. We'd love to partner. And actually, the other thing I think would be really cool, especially in this kind of context, is so COVID sort of forced us to figure out manufacturing. And at one point we were literally manufacturing in our bedrooms, as in like right here, it was just full of, sewing machines and heat presses and stuff. And we basically learned that, for a few £1,000s worth of kit, like a few sewing machines, a few heat presses, you can set up a mini factory where you can make a few hundred of these devices end to end. So I know when we last spoke, when we were in Berlin, John, we were talking about like, what's this idea of like a factory in a box? It's like, well, not quite a box, but nearly big box. So, that's one of the things that always struck me about e-NABLE. It's so wide reaching and entrepreneurial and just, scrappy and getting things done. I mean, what a great way to reach people. So that's a new thing. We haven't done that before. It's sort of in our heads, but I think if anyone's to do it, it's probably one of the community. So again, I'm keen to chat about that. That would be really exciting, especially if there's someone near for the purposes, if someone near Ukraine or near Poland, and save us shipping stuff from here. If we can make it nearby, then that would be really, really cool.
That makes sense. Zainab, were you?
Can I say something? Yeah. I'm gonna have to go early, but I just wanted to say to Nate that I just found out about you guys right now. And
Oh.
we have a lot of we have some cases that we haven't been able to help because the amputation was above the elbow. And I would really love to chat with you guys or
Please.
directing
Please,
those cases to you guys.
I'll put my email in the chat. But yeah, that would be great.
Can I ask them to share all the emails afterwards because I'm not able to copy that right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
So,
Okay. So
maybe if it's easier, Zainab has her email in the chat as well. If you want to maybe send her an email, Nate.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah,
so, you know, socketry is the thing we are, of course, weakest on, and for good reasons. It's also the biggest challenge with the prosthetic community, who know the right way to do things, but I would like to think that you've just shown us the right way, the new right way to do it, which could really change the game. What end effectors are people putting on your sleeves these days?
So you guys can imagine the world's kind of your oyster. I mean, we have everything from quite generic tools to you always hear something that's very bespoke and very specific, and that's the beauty of it. You can sort of have that ability to have something very bespoke. But in terms of standard tools, we found after a while that certain things kind of converge, and we hear things a lot. So there's always questions over things that hold cylindrical objects. So this is just called the Janet, and it just holds different things. It's got like foam in here. It's just Velcro. So you can change the foam out for different size phones. So you can have like forks, pen. People use this for eating a lot, especially if they're bilateral. You can just put a fork in, and because it's a friction wrist, you can just sort of nudge it to a different angle and then do that. But because it is Velcro, you can pull this all the way out and wrap it around something big. So I've seen people like vacuum with it. That's kind of interesting. Then we've got this, which is called the Kitty. It's essentially the same thing, just on a ball joint. So this again gives you can do lots of stuff with this. I've seen people in the gym with this, like bench pressing and rowing and doing all kinds of stuff, which was cool. I mean, I was looking at my engineer being like, "Did you know it could do that?" I was like, "No, I didn't know it could do that. It was not designed to do that, but that's fine." You can tell that a lot of these, because we've designed them in the UK and for predominantly the West, they don't look like hands; they look like tools, which here is fine. But we do find as we go to places like Sierra Leone, a lot of the African territories, like sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East, a lot of people saying, no, I want cosmetic. So you can have like cosmetic solutions. This one's quite pale. It looks a bit zombie-like, but you can have cosmetic ones, but just same thing. Just have like little plugs.
And where does that come from?
This one is from a supplier called ATP Supply. They're somewhere in Europe. They're quite expensive. They're like about $35. And it's rubber. It's good. It's quite heavy. I like it. It's one of the best I found for the price. But I think there's something you could do there. So if you guys could design like a really lightweight, nice looking hand, I would buy a lot from you. so
well,
tell me about that.
So
and honestly, it looks a lot like your gripper hand, John. And if that was printed in a TPU with a partial infill, I would think it would be lighter and it would have some flexibility for, I don't know, just a thought.
I would also be quite keen on, I don't know too much about coloring in 3D prints, because you're definitely right. Like with the infill, you could make it really light. And with the gripper, then it's actually got some functionality, which is what people are after. And then the next one that everyone's asking is about matching skin tone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know too much about coloring.
Jeremy knows a lot about coloring. Tell them your story, Jeremy.
Well, we actually did a project some years back where we queried the community to sort of come up with the most common skin tones. I'm not sure we succeeded, but we at least agreed on half a dozen or so skin tones that cover a big section of the population. And we have produced PET-G, which is our recommended material for strength and temperature resistance, et cetera. So we have PET-G materials available in those skin tone colors in different sizes. And so some people have already taken advantage of that for making prosthetic devices. It's pretty popular, but for making, gripper hands like the design that John shared with you with the modified plug instead of their screw seems like a pretty low-hanging fruit kind of, it would be pretty easy to do.
Oh, I think so. If
And
we
it's a
could
nice,
We've been working in France on a workflow based on the same idea that some people would like to have a skin tone printed. So we worked on a workflow to acquire the exact skin tone of the recipient. And that recipient usually is very far away from us, so we cannot easily reach him. And we ended up with this little thing. It's from Pantone.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I have one of those too. It works great.
And it's a small card with a hole in the center. And you put it on the skin, you take a picture with a smartphone, and there is a software that is going to analyze the adjacent dots colors,
Oh my
and
gosh,
that is going to give you the exact skin color.
It'll actually give you the Pantone code, as a matter of
Yeah.
fact, and it's very accurate. I actually use that exact card for our filaments to identify the colors of each of our filaments. So we use that same solution, and it does work great.
And this costs like $15 and can be sent anywhere around the world in a letter. So it's a very good solution, I think.
Oh, that's really brilliant, because that's one of the things. So that's really cool, actually, because it's the same with our sleeves. So because they're flexible, it's like clothes. So you can you can put them in the post and send them anywhere. So if you could send them with a little card that lets you match their skin color at the same time, that's really cool.
There's the link in the chat for you there, Nate.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's loads happening in this chat. Oh yeah, that's cool.
so, you could imagine a whole next e-NABLE process based on what we've talked about today. And we will continue this conversation. I wonder, so first of all, I want to open it back to the larger group to see if other people have points they want to make with regard to what we can now see emerging on the horizon. And since no one is stepping up, I will say, so Nate, you sort of emerge as I think as really a pivotal person as we think about this, because you have sleeves which open up the possibility that we could make ourselves and our services available to lots of new amputees, many of which are dealing with even more dire situations right now, but there are going to be a lot of people who need something along these lines. And because you're now in a better place to have this conversation with the people you're talking to who have made inquiries, and our own inquiries are likely to open up this possibility. Let me ask you a little bit more about your business model. I really think that this notion of a factory in a box as a way of really trying to say, this is a way of scaling up for emergency situations while the world gets reorganized is really very interesting. What do you have to say about intellectual property issues with regard to Koala?
I have no idea.
Still, after all these years, you still have no idea.
I have no idea. All I know is
right.
that it can work because I've seen it work. So,
Well, what's the status of your design right now, Nate? Is it patented? Is it open source? Is it just somewhere in between?
the sleeves are patented. So the
Okay.
process for making these are patented, which is good. So it means we're fully in control of who can license them or not. So we haven't really ever explored licensing. We haven't explored terms of that. And I know there's lots of open source licensing you can do. At this stage, honestly, it would probably this would be a proper partnership, and it would be figuring it out together. So it would be
okay.
whoever
That's
we
what I
chat
was going to say. I mean, it sounds
we
like
should
that would
figure
be a
out
bigger
together.
that would be a bigger discussion and maybe a separate discussion. If I might suggest that as we head into we're in our last 10 minutes here, maybe it's a good time to start kind of recapping and figuring out what next steps would be. It seems to me that there's been discussion about two areas that we might be able to have an impact. One of the areas was 3D printed splints, and the other area is the discussion we've been having with Nate here for printing, hands or end tools for those sockets. I wonder if anybody has thoughts about how we might proceed on either or both fronts as far as next steps.
Well, we have
the problem. Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Nancy.
We have we have a board meeting tomorrow evening, so I'll talk to them about that and see if any of us in France. We are lucky enough to be far away enough from Ukraine, so the war and the refugee flux has not reached us very much yet. But to see if we can get in touch with any association that operates in Ukraine or has connection in Ukraine to send splinters, for example.
I agree. So I think one branch of follow-up on this is for all of us to explore connections to the agencies that deal with the people who might deploy or receive these things. I think that's clear. We need the pipeline. Another thing to explore, it seems to me, does have to do with a collaboration between Koala and e-NABLE. Nate, I'm amused and surprised. Well, congratulations that you have a patent, but I'm also amused and surprised that you still don't quite know what your strategy is. I think we can probably help there. I think your product will be very, very helpful to e-NABLE in the movement, but I think that our experience in dealing with some of these issues ought to be helpful for you. And actually, Jeremy can vouch for the fact that there are a number of happy collaborations between commercial ventures and e-NABLE, which are mutually beneficial. And in your case, as a startup, I think you might actually be able to really scale up awareness and perhaps production without giving away the store. So we can have that conversation going forward also.
That would be great. I think, like, if one thing sound that, I mean, it's certainly our aim above anything else is really reaching people that haven't been able to access prosthetics before. So it is about access and about scale and volume. So anything that lets us reach more people in big numbers, very interested in. Please do.
Okay.
Let's chat about it.
Well, that's great. So those are two conversations which can happen next. An interesting question is whether, okay, so I will follow up on these things because I can't resist, but I got to say that this is a really interesting, I'm going to follow up with Eric and see whether he wants to be the point person to try to pull these pieces together, or Thierry or anyone else. But the point is, as you all may know, and as you all will soon know, Jeremy and I are exploring ways of passing the leadership and coordination role for e-NABLE US on to other people. And while I wouldn't miss this collaboration for the world, I think it is an interesting opportunity to think about how this new vision of how e-NABLE could really scale up in a big way also connects to people who have an interest in scaling it up in a big way and can do it internationally and the way it needs to happen. So I just want to mention that to Thierry and to Zeynep and others. I guess for the moment, I'm the de facto placeholder for pulling this together. But I want you to understand that I think it's a really good opportunity for that not to be the case. I think I'm also speaking for Jeremy, but Jeremy, if you want to take the lead on this, because it could become a interesting opportunity for the filaments that you've developed, then you should be the connector and the bringer together. Or
I don't think I'm in the best position to take the lead on this yet. If it goes in a direction where it seems like our skin tone PETG materials have a part to play, I'll be absolutely happy to facilitate that. But I don't know that I want to take the lead on the overall project at this point, given what else I have going on.
okay. So other chapter leaders, I do want you to hear that conversation is going on along with this. But I also have to say that today's meeting really provides an interesting vision for how we could change our game in an interesting way. So Nate will follow up with you. I will be following up with Eric and with Mazvi and with Cherry, who are all going to be talking to possible agency partners. And the discussion will continue.
And I'll just mention one final note as on the PETG side, Nate, if we want to explore that and if we can find a way to help you there, my partner for filament manufacturing, as it happens, is a limb different individual himself. So he's very supportive of our work. I know that he would love to work with me on something in terms of maybe bringing the cost of those materials down if we find a need for it. So happy to help there.
That would be awesome. That'd be really cool.
And Nate, if we go to koala.uk, will we get your story, or do we still have to get Nate to tell us your story these days?
You probably should have to get me to tell you, but
the website is great. I was looking at it.
An abridged version might be there. I tell you,
Okay, good.
I swear we will put one up at some point.
Okay, I think there are some really interesting immediate opportunities here. So thank you,
There are
everybody,
lots of
for
case
coming.
studies there. You should go see those. So yeah.
Good. Terrific. We all have homework to do. Oh, I did have just a follow-up question. People can bail if they have to. It's the top of the hour. I'd be interested in understanding your patents. I know that that's separate to the strategy, but when you say the sleeve, do you mean the outer cloth part or the inner plastic part or what?
Sorry, I call sockets sleeves instead of sockets purely because I don't know, force of habit. So it's the whole thing. So it's the structure.
Okay.
And the cover, and I think it covers the wrist, and I don't think it covers the terminal devices. I think they're left generic, but it's written in a way so that it covers essentially any part of the body. So upper limb, leg, partial hand. It's the method of manufacture and fitting.
Interesting. Okay, so that's worth thinking about and exploring.
Definitely. Yeah.
As we shall do. All right. Any last words from any last speakers?
Just a quick reminder that the notes are in the chat. So if anybody wants a summary of all the people that were involved and their email addresses and the different points and links that were shared in the chat, feel free to.
Well, Ben, my Zoom has crashed several times. So will you also copy those notes into the document that's on the
Why don't I
screen?
just respond to the last email that you guys sent out?
Great. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah.
Goodbye,
great
guys.
meeting. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you, Michaela, or seeing you.